Another 4-1 defeat to Arsenal. And let's be honest, we haven't just stalled since we played them at the Emirates. We put the car in reverse and floored it into a brick wall. That fucking Eze and that big donkey, they made scoring look easy. Was there anything to encourage us? Well, Mawani looked lively, Archie full of heart. Radu was solid until his lungs and legs gave out, but Xavi kept running up blind alleys, and Gallagher, was he even playing? And was there another show of petulance by Van de Ven? Looks like he's had enough. Well, we all have, Micky. And Flappy. We'll talk about him later. Igor says they're good players with bad habits, but has he got the time to make them stop picking their noses? You know what? We're pathetically grateful for Liverpool's VAR-assisted offside winner at Forest and for West Ham's inertia, but we still need a few points, which begs the question, where are they coming from? Cheer up, it's nice one, Cyril.
Nice one, Cyril.
So, welcome to Nice One, Cyril. I'm Simon Lipson. With me today, we have, as ever, Spurs journalistic legend Julie Welch. And joining us for the first time on the show, it's Rob White, son of the great John White, author of, and not just author, co-author with the great Julie, of The Ghost of White Hart Lane, which is a marvellous read. And Rob, it's also become a rather fabulous play. Just had a little run, didn't it? Is it due back anytime soon?
Yeah, hi there, Simon. So it's had 4 sort of iterations of various types, and you're right. It's just been on at Jackson's Lane in Highgate for 10 days-ish at end of January, and I think we're just about to. We're hopefully exciting news is it's going to go up to Musselburgh, which is where my dad is from. They have a festival every year in July, and it's going to go there, and it may well go back to Edinburgh for a few selected days in August. Yeah, so it's been fantastic.
Well, let's. Now that's the good bit out of the way. It goes sour from here. So we lost to Arsenal. I don't think many of us, Rob, were surprised that we lost to Arsenal. What we were, I guess, looking for was the manner of that defeat. And I think there were encouraging signs perhaps in the first half, even though we barely touched the ball. But it fell away rather dramatically in the second. What was your take?
Then obviously we got this Tudor bounce, and everybody was full of, well, I won't call it optimism, but it was watered down pessimism, or maybe it was champagne pessimism. Unfortunately, I think it just delayed the inevitable, really. And weirdly, we end up with the same result that we had when we played them at the Emirates and Thomas Frank was in charge. Yeah. So I think in hindsight, and hopefully we'll go into it deeper, but my anger is now firmly placed back elsewhere. So
yeah, I kind of resigned myself to losing, but there was a kind of a depressing feel about it, Julie. We, as I said before, there were so little signs of grit and determination. We had, Micky flying into tackles and Palhinha doing his thing. And the real problem for me was a lack of quality. It's very simple. They were in charge of the ball. We were chasing. We were doing quite a good job of stopping them, even though they had a few chances. And then we miraculously got back into the game through a little bit of Mawani magic. But I don't know, the second half was just another display of kind of supine football.
Well, as Rob was saying, there was that moment, which I always have, when Mawani scored. I thought, as you say, Mawani works his magic at last. I think it was his first goal in 19 games or something like that. But I thought, Tudor has come in, he's played Mawani before at his other club. We're on our way. I thought we can do it. And then, of course, everything just gets buggered up as usual because it does. And to be honest, once it started going downhill, it was it was precipitous. They are a much better team than us. I don't think any of our players, possibly Micky, but otherwise would get into Arsenal's first team squad, not even their first team squad. It was just incredibly dispiriting. I'm not going to say anything about Eze now because I know we've got Room 101 coming up.
I was going to ask Rob about a moment in the second half. So we conceded pretty early on in the second half. Seemed to me that Gyökeres was given time and space to have a shot, which he needs. Then we scored a goal. My view of that, Rob, was that, I mean, I'm on kind of that side of the pitch and at that end of the stadium. And straight away I saw the defender topple forward, arms up, all that stuff. And I had seen Moani's hand, sort of go to him. I couldn't tell whether there was much of a push or not. We conceded a goal like that, and it wasn't struck off against Liverpool. This time we were the victims of decision, and it went against us. And then straight after that, more or less, all the air deflated out of the balloon, and we conceded a couple more. What was your view of that incident?
Well, view of the incident sounds very similar to yours, actually. But I also, from my recollection, and I haven't, and I probably never will watch it back in real time. I've seen clips online, but I believe the referee had blown before the ball had even gone into the net. That was my take on it. And I looked around the guy behind me, and we both were like, yeah, push, with a push in the back there, while people were celebrating. And it did seem, I don't know, again, whether we're going to get onto the officiating, but I thought the referee was really poor yesterday. I think also if you go just forward from that as well, just to let in the second goal right after half time is unforgivably poor. So sort of, yes, whether Moani's goal was or was not is sort of secondary. But I actually think the one for me that probably would have at least made the last 10 minutes really interesting was the chance that it was Richarlison or Solanke where Raya scooped it off the line, and I think we will go to our goalkeeper as well at some point. But I know for a fact if that was Vicario, it would have ended up in the net. And again, there's a big difference, a massive difference there where there shouldn't be that big a difference.
I mean, on this particular podcast, Vicario has earned the sobriquet Mr. Flappy. And rather like Julie, I don't want to talk about Vicario just now because there is a Room 101 coming up. And yeah, you've obviously got the idea. That was a key moment, wasn't it? It was just, all right, we do need to talk about Vicario, but perhaps specifically, Julie, in relation to Raya, whose solidity and quality on crosses and catching and strength, it just makes you feel like, our guy is so feeble. You could see him being bullied at every corner. And actually our defenders did a pretty good job of looking after him. But, you're really not going to win very much with a keeper in whom neither the players nor the crowd have any confidence. Arsenal
bullied Vicario last year when Ange was in charge. He is eminently bullyable. Any confidence he had has dissipated completely. The thing is, Arsenal spent money on a really, really solid keeper, just as Manchester City did when they got Donnarumma. And, those are clubs who mean business. And we are stuck with a goalkeeper who is apparently, one of the leadership group, whatever that is. Maybe he sort of get a bit of a get out because he made that amazing save in the final in Bilbao. But every time the ball approaches or a player approaches, you just sort of get that intake of breath. I don't think he's going to get that, or, he's going to cock it up. So if I don't have confidence in Vicario, heaven knows what the actual players feel. I just wanted to bring in something that Rob posted on a particular WhatsApp group today, and it's a quote from Vince Lombardi. "Winning is not a sometime thing, it's an all-time thing. You don't win once in a while. You don't do things right once in a while. You do them right all the time. Winning is a habit. Unfortunately, so is losing. And he got all sorts of thumbs up for that. And everybody agreed with it.
Yeah. It's become our default position, of course, losing everything. I think we all felt a long time ago that Frank wasn't doing the job. And it seemed to me that Vinay and Langer played their card much too late. They've sacked him after the transfer window, when it was patently obvious to all of us that he should have gone long before, and we should have given that window to someone else. And we're now in a position of, really, it's like free fall. We've got a manager that our players don't know, possibly don't respect, because, his record suggests that he's a guy who doesn't hang on to jobs very long. Why should they listen to him? And in the end, I wonder, is it just going to come down to players' pride and self-respect, or lack thereof, whether we stay up?
I don't know. And it's, as you're talking there, I can feel my insides churning just at the thought of it. And I think that the reason I posted that quote, which is, you can interpret it in many ways, but I'm not going to lay all the blame on him, but I think last season, the players were guilty of this, almost like a revisionist history, guilty of saying, well, the only reason we won the Europa League was because we chose to tactically lose league games. And yes, we can argue that coach has been there a long time before, but I don't think last season helped in that respect. And I now think it's almost become ingrained. And I thought Tudor's words yesterday were quite interesting on habits. And that's probably why that quote stuck in my brain to look that quote out. But we all know habits take a time to change. And if you've only got 11 games to change, it's going to go quite close to the wire. I was personally quite disappointed, and I know we should have expected back five. I'm not a massive tactician, but I just thought it seemed with the same faults that we had when we played them at the Emirates. We ended up with a really unbalanced 5-3-1-1, and I would have just gone with a straight 4-4-2 with. I thought Paulinho, I thought we had a good game, but actually I would have played him in midfield. I thought that the five only works. Everybody in world football would say it only works if your fullbacks are going to get up and back. Spence might get up and then might forget conveniently to get back, whereas Archie Gray he's not a fullback, so he's not going to naturally go up and back. He stops at the halfway line, which is a beautiful place to stop. I watched enough games with Peter Baker. I was lucky enough to do that, and Peter would look and say, "What's the guy going over the halfway line for?" But so I think the team yesterday was unbalanced and did us no favours. But other people would say, well, you can only work with what you've got.
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting formation, Julia. We don't normally do much formation bollocks on this podcast.
Yes, Simon, let me stop you there, because I am absolutely hopeless at tactics. I'm
Okay.
I know nothing.
Well, let's move on from that. I was going to pose a very, very complex technical question, but I'll leave it. I think what is so upsetting here, Julie, is we're kind of just off the back of winning our first trophy in 17 years. I mean, those scenes in Tottenham High Road, the celebrations, the joy that we experienced. And yet that just feels like a different decade to me. It feels like a different era. It's almost like it didn't happen, because here we are with a very realistic prospect of being relegated. I just don't know where the points are coming from. As Rob said, it's a habit now. We're losing is the habit. How do we break out of that? We've got Palace, we've got Fulham, we've got Forest. These are teams we have to beat now. It's almost got down to that, because we're not going to beat Liverpool. We're not going to beat Chelsea. It's so tight.
Yes, it is. First of all, what you were saying about, last summer, as a writer and a dramatist, of course, it's the absolute stuff of drama. You reach the peak, bliss, joy, ecstasy, And then the next scene opens on despair and disaster because he'd been relegated. And I'm not quite sure where I stand on it, because yesterday, during the Arsenal game, I had this sort of presentiment that everything was going to be all right, that we were going to get away with it. We wouldn't be relegated. And I sort of could back that up with the fact that way before, everything started, I predicted we would win the Europa League last year. And we did. So I thought, well, trust in instinct again. But this morning, I just thought, face it. Girl, fuck.
Thank you for saying fuck, because it's, we do need one of those from you every week. Over our WhatsApp group, I said that it was for me, that performance was akin to a bloke on a bicycle pedaling for all he's worth with a juggernaut thundering along behind him. And somehow he's outrunning this juggernaut, but it's coming. And that's how I felt it was with Arsenal, that whatever we did, so, like extrapolating, even if the Mawani equaliser, inverted commas, had stood Rob, I still think they'd have steamrolled us, and because the difference, the gulf in class was so patent. To me, we looked like a lower ranked championship team desperately trying to hold out in an FA Cup tie against Barcelona. I don't know. It just felt we were outmatched everywhere across the pitch.
Not even like it's a classic Arsenal side. They're okay, but they're not wonderful. They work really, really hard. They seem like a proper team, but actually there's some average players in that
it's
side.
It's interesting that, because we've been saying on the pod that we don't think they're special. They're the best. They're the most efficient of a baddish bunch this year. City haven't really found their form consistently. Liverpool have faded away. Chelsea, Aston Villa. So almost by default, this efficient machine going to win the league. It looks that way anyway. I'm not really bothered about Arsenal because I'm too worried about Spurs these days, Julie. Richie, your mate Richie, he came on, and I thought to myself, oh, finally someone is back from injury. And then I thought, oh, no, it's only Richie. Shit, let's not get excited. And he came on and predictably did nothing. But after the match, he said that the ref was the reason why we lost. Now, we've talked about the ref, and he wasn't very good. But that concerns me as well, because if Richie thinks that was the reason we lost, and if there's any sense that this is the mood among the players, then they really are, unaware of what they're doing and what's happening.
Absolutely agreed. I always quite like it when Richie appears because, quite often in the last few months, he has actually done something. He has scored some goals and he has made a nuisance of himself. But I agree, that's a very, very serious and bad take, because if that's the way they're thinking, there is no hope. You wonder if there's anybody in that team, particularly while Romero is out, who's actually interested in sort of winning. I don't know. You just get back to the thing, losing is a habit. And I've seen so many teams go down, drop into the championship, or indeed, I'm so old, I've seen teams drop into the second division, including Spurs. And you just know that there is a moment when it just goes, and what has been a slow decline just becomes a very, very fast sort of downhill fall. As I say, I was going to approach tonight's pod, this week's pod, with some sort of optimistic message, and I can see that we're now spiraling like Spurs into doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Come on, you're a comedian.
Let me see if I can do an impression of Ronnie Corbett. Because I don't know. Do you know what? I don't feel that's appropriate in the circumstances. My producer, he said, Ronnie Corbett, Ronnie. No, okay, all right. It wasn't. No, it turns out it wasn't appropriate. So, Rob, we had nobody on the bench Arsenal's bench included Odegaard, and it included, Mourinho, and all these players who have top players who have all played and been effective in the Premier League this season. And it begs the question, why are we so short of players? Now, we know we've got a lot of injuries. So why the fuck didn't we buy some players in the transfer window? It's not as though Vinay and Langer couldn't see that these players were going to be out for months and that we were going to be short.
Yeah, I think it's as big a mystery to me as it is to most people. And I think was there an interview with Langer saying that one of the reasons we didn't buy players because they wouldn't be eligible to play in the Champions League, something similar. Yeah, I do not, for the life of me, I do not understand it. It's inexcusable and almost unexplainable. But I also think the cavalry will arrive too late. But the cavalry we're talking about is Maddison, who was never particularly up there with the greats, and Kulusevski, as I keep calling him, rather than Kulusevski. I'm stumped by that, really. Where is the bench?
The other player we're missing terribly is, of course, Kudus, who has almost been forgotten in all of this. Here's a guy who was effective and powerful and strong, can do things that no one else can do, and here's an outlet we just don't have anymore. Julie, I wonder. I don't really know much about player psychology. I'm sure you know more than I do. Given that we've got at best 13 fit players who've got proper first team experience, do you think that perhaps subconsciously our players know that there's no competition for their places and there's no pressure on them to play at their best because there's no one to come in and replace them? Or do you think players just don't work like that? Is it the case that they're always trying their best and maybe falling short, but that kind of pressure doesn't apply?
Well, again, I'd sort of go back to Ramiro. For all his faults of personality, he was always somebody who was trying his best, trying to win. Without him, we've certainly lost, I would say, 50% of what my old games mistress called And Archie Gray always gives of his best. And Xavi, for all his sort of lack of impact at the moment, or his lack of impact against Arsenal, I should say, he does try. But the rest of them, I don't know. I mean, absolute shower, as Terry Thomas would say. But it comes back to that thing about getting in the habit of losing. I mean, it is a mindset, I'm afraid. I know I'm getting on one of my hobby horses, talking about my best mate again. But, in the days of Steve Perryman, you would never, ever, ever have had what we've got now, because there was a captain who was absolutely serious and committed about every single minute of every single game. Players have changed, of course, since that generation. It doesn't matter to them so much now because they can just go to another club. If relegation does happen, we'll lose a lot of the best players. I mean, I think Micky is already, mentally 3/4 of the way to Anfield. We'll almost certainly lose Ramiro as well.
You mentioned Micky there. Now, we've spent a lot of time on this podcast bigging him up, and he's a wonderful footballer and a sensible boy. Good haircut, Julie, tremendously good haircut. But there was that moment with Frank, he and Jed Spence ignoring Frank as they came off the pitch. There is a bit of film going around at the moment, Rob, which seems to show, it can be interpreted in lots of different ways, but it seems to show Igor Tudor on the touchline shouting not at but towards Micky, and he's trying to get the players to push up. The back line, push up, push up. He was doing it for most of the match. And there's an indication, at least, that Micky is kind of dismissing him, ignoring him. I don't know whether you've seen that.
I did see it. I saw it earlier today. And I wasn't sure because if you watch the whole thing, it sort of looks like he does eventually do what he wants. He does eventually push up in a line. But I've got this, and I'm not going to put it anywhere near 101, but the set piece coach, who I don't know his name and I've forgotten his name, but it drives me mad because the guy will, And if I was a player, it would drive me mad. The guy will stand there, even at goal kicks, telling them what to do at goal kicks. And I almost think it's not just with us. I think footballers in general are actually micromanaged unbelievably at the moment. And actually, probably good luck to Micky for just ignoring him and thinking, you know what, mate, I'm just trying to do my job here. You're not stood here. You're not actually in here. You're stood 50 metres away. And I think it probably looks quite easy from where a manager stands.
I do sense with Micky that, well, as you said, he's sort of checked out a little bit, and he, this is not where he wants to be, or perhaps where he's even going to be. And I think 100 million will shift him wherever he wants to go. But it is troubling that one of our senior players, one of our best players, perhaps the only player we think might get into Arsenal's squad, is seemingly, at least, capable of a kind of petulance and a kind of disregard for the manager that's unhealthy, particularly in the situation we're currently in.
It's also very unprofessional, and it doesn't make me any fonder of Micky, who I think he's a wonderful player, but with that sort of attitude, I don't know, he doesn't deserve to go to a better club. There is no better club than Spurs, of course, but I'm biased. To revert a bit to, all the sort of instructions from the set-piece coach and things like that, there is a school of thought that players do need to know what they've got to do, because you can only keep one or two things in your mind, working memory-wise, at one time. I also had this sort of flashback to Bill Nicholson and Eddie Bailey sitting in a dugout in the early 70s, screaming their throats off at players. It just happens. I don't know. I mean, it's unedifying. I totally take Rob's point. Somebody like Micky, who is probably by now quite arrogant, probably wouldn't like that. But I mean, he's not a completely mature player yet. I think he probably does think he knows better than the new bloke. And as you say, it's probably very hard for some of the players to respect a new head coach who has got a track record of sort of sticking in the job for, let's say 5 months, something like that, before, getting the sack or moving on to something else, but usually getting the sack. Somebody who's known as a new manager bounce expert. I don't know. It's just a horrible situation. It could have been addressed much earlier, certainly before the start of this year. And I think it's gloom and doom again. I think it's gone too far. You can see from certain players' body language, including Micky, that they're not buying it. Quite honestly, I don't know what Tudor's going to be able to do.
It's something we talked about last week, Rob. The idea that you can bring somebody in with not the most exciting track record, 11 jobs in 12 years, doesn't stick around much, either gets fired or flounces out, but he has shown some ability in the short term to get teams to play. But I just wonder whether our boys are thinking, well, we didn't respect Frank, who was brought in by this club. Why should we respect this guy who was brought in by the club? We don't know who he is, what he's about. And, we know, as Julie says, they know better.
I always think that these guys are professional footballers, and they've been facing massive changes in their life, probably since the age of 7. So to something that seems sort of extraordinary to us mere mortals is probably actually fairly commonplace for them. State the bleeding obvious, but there has been no continuity at Spurs whatsoever. So we've gone from extremes to extremes to extremes, and it's almost a bit like, I'm just trying to think, when you see these programs on dogs that behave badly, it's the training that's the problem. And actually, maybe the Tudor's the player whisperer. That's what we need, is somebody can just blow up their nostrils and get them doing what we need them to do, a magical ability. But I don't think he is.
No, actually, Igor looks like the last person to whisper at anyone. He's going to bellow in your face. One last thing. I just wanted to, for what it's worth, my own view was that looking at the film of Micky, I felt like he was looking over at Igor when the instruction was being given, but I also felt he was concentrating on the game. He didn't want to suddenly find himself, with someone running through and he wasn't ready. So I'd give him the benefit of the doubt, but I do feel as though Micky could be a problem for us over the next few games. All right, look, I tell you what, we've said quite enough about our shitty team for today. Why don't we move on to Room 101, which is becoming our regular feature, and it's quite a fun one. Who have you got for us, or what have you got for us today, Julie?
Well, I've already previewed it, of course. It is Mr. Eze again, just because I can. I put him in Room 101. I don't think it was last week, but it was probably quite recently. And obviously he didn't stay there. He broke out of Room 101 again. So I'm going to try again, because I just think he could have signed for Spurs. He could have joined the greatest team the world has ever seen. But he dumped us for Arsenal. And then he goes and scores against us again. Is there a deeper hellhole in Room 101 where, a bottomless well, perhaps, where we could drop him and then put a lot of sort of rubbish and builder's rubble and things on top, so he just never comes out again?
Yeah, I mean, that does feel a bit like closing the stable door after the horse has bolted, to be honest. He's done all the damage he can do to us this year. It's very depressing. I have to confess, I take some of the blame, because I did put on our WhatsApp group before the match, by the way, Eze hasn't scored since that hat-trick against us at the Emirates. And there we are, enough said. Now, Rob, what have you got for us for Room 101?
Because it's my first time on the pod, then I'm going to try and shoehorn two things in. One is not really one is a rule change that I made, and I would make, and I've been sort of championing this for a few months now, but actually slightly longer. And I think it was massively evident where I'm going with this yesterday. And it's in its simplest form. It is that a team that's been scored against can kick off as soon as the ball is back on the centre spot. So they don't have to wait for the endless celebration and it to be filmed. As soon as the ball is back on the centre spot, the referee has to blow his whistle. It doesn't matter if they're still on the corner flag, pulling strange faces and making gestures, whatever, and the game can carry on. And of course, the only thing we would have to worry about is offside, but that's fine, because we can brief our players, and I'm sure that they can hold those one or two things in their mind at that point.
Yes.
But I think that is my first thing, if I'm allowed to put that in. But of course, the more pressing thing, and I think this needs to go into 101 as soon as possible, which is basically scrapping automatic promotion and relegation.
Yes, do you know what? I am right behind that one. Just for this season, perhaps.
Just for this season. Well, yeah. Let's see.
We shall see. Yeah. Well, I've got again. I've signposted this, but I just need to stick Flappy in there. I've got to get Flappy in there and never let him out. Look, here's a bloke. He can't come for crosses. He's weak. He gets bullied. He can't fucking kick. He can't catch. He's vulnerable to long-range shots. He's a reaction keeper. We know that. I think if the thing I find even more unforgivable is when he lets goal in, he's instantly up on his feet shouting at everyone else as though it couldn't possibly be his fault. And the volley he gave to Berreval on Berreval's one of his very early appearances, that was unforgivable, absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, do you know that we now have 3 goalkeeping coaches? And I say, if Vicario is in goal, still not enough. It is not enough. All right, well, there we are. That is my little rant for today. Here's another thing I've taken to recently, and it's stupid Spurs tweets. Stupid Spurs tweets. And I will ask you, both of you, to tell me how you feel about these. Perhaps you might agree with what's being said. Here's a stupid tweet, because I love the fact that it's so definitive. It's so clear. It says Vinay will not be at Tottenham next season, right? Will not be at Tottenham next season. Almost confirmed at this point. it is also very likely that Johan Langer loses his job. If the club are to hire Poch, he wants a lot of control over the scouting and transfers, so a director of football might not be needed. Now, I mean, that's clearly whoever wrote that tweet knows some stuff that no one else knows. He must live in the boardroom.
Sounds like Donna Cullen to me.
Well, I wonder, do you know what? Perhaps Donna Cullen is, masquerading as Tottenham Tears, whatever the hell they are. Here's another one. Look, for you, Julie. Igor Tudor has been told his goal with Tottenham. Sorry, I can't even read this out. Igor Tudor has been told that his goal with Tottenham Hotspur is to secure a top 10 finish. If he achieves that, the club has promised to consider offering him a contract beyond this season. I mean, come on, that all makes sense.
Yeah, my feelings entirely. I mean, whoever posted that tweet, I presume you don't want to reveal the name of this absolute twat.
I won't.
No, okay. I mean, we're a top 10 finish. That's not even the pinnacle, is it? They're letting Igor Tudor off lightly as far as I'm concerned. Yes, a top 10 finish. My goodness.
Top 4 at least. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. How do these people, I mean, I don't know whether you checked it for engagement, for likes. Do they get any responses? Or is this just some poor sap, shouting into the void, a bit like Vicario?
Well, it's probably a 12-year-old boy with a fervid imagination, but yes, it does get engagement, this kind of shit. Here's another one. I mean, on Rob, you'll like this one, I think. Liverpool and other major European clubs are monitoring 18-year-old central defender Luka Vuskovic, who's on loan at Hamburger SV from Tottenham. So they're monitoring, all these clubs are monitoring a good player. That sounds ridiculous. How can that be?
Who knew? That's, incredible, really, that should be the case.
Yeah, it does seem crazy. And here's a final one. Either of you can take this one. Ich kann mich mit diesem Drecksverein, der auf Platz 15 rumalt und Savis Karriere zerstören möchte, einfach nicht mehr identifizieren, werde mich ab jetzt, stop laughing at my German, wieder zu 100%.
Simon, you're ordering food again. Just don't do it. Don't do it.
Well, I'm going to say Harry James tweeting again.
Let me tell you what that was said. It said something like, I can't watch this crap anymore. They're in 15th place. So this was a couple of weeks ago. And he said, and Xavi is wasting his time there, and I can't identify with this Tottenham team anymore. So I'm just going to stick with my team 100% RBL. All right, I tell you what, we are playing Fulham. I'm sorry to bring us back down with a thump. We're playing Fulham at the weekend, away. Fulham in form. They just beat Sunderland comfortably and look very, very dangerous and very, very powerful. Rob, where's this one going?
Oh, sadly, do you know what? They're packed full of ex-Gooners. It just is part of their DNA, I think. And of course, Brian Sessegnon, who I think scored last year against us. Yeah, so apart from that, it's going to go fantastically well. I think this is the start of the revival, basically.
Yeah.
Down by the riverside. It's a great place to have a revival. And I can see it only going one way from here.
Yes, so I think we all can. I mean, I've been to Craven Cottage once when I was a younger man. I was the guest of somebody who had a box there, and it was the crappiest box you've ever seen in your life, stuck behind the goal somewhere. At least we've got really nice boxes. We've got a crap team, but we've got nice boxes. Julie, what's your take? Do you think we're going to get anything out of this bloody game?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just sort of relying on the fact that Palhinha will be motivated to score with a bicycle kick against his old club. Mm-hmm. That's the best I can come up with. I must say, but we always make this mistake with Fulham, always underestimate them. All the times we played them in the cups and things like that, and, just let them win. Something's got to give. Honestly, it's time we had a bit of luck coming our way. I don't know what's going to happen. Presumably none of the wounded will be back. So it's the same old shit. It's just too hard to contemplate, really, isn't it? Because
It is.
Yeah, I'm concentrating on Paulinia having scoring a worldie, 2 worldies maybe, one bicycle kick, 1 scorpion kick. I don't know. He can choose. Apart from that, we can't lose, can we? We can't lose. Even a
No, I
draw
mean,
would be okay.
Yeah, listen, we'd take a draw, wouldn't we? Just finally, the bit of tweeting going on today by Jar Wobble, who I think you know, Julie. Jar Wobble, big Spurs fan.
I know.
Yep.
John.
You know Jar.
Yeah. I know.
That can't be his real name. And he's sort of saying how sweet it was to win the Europa League, and what are we left with? A walk down memory lane, he says. The new shining stadium is perfect. It's like a big kitsch, glossy tombstone. You can see where this is going.
He's got away with work, that man. I've actually seen that tweet because he posted it on another Spurs WhatsApp group, and I could only quote Shelley at him. Look upon thy works, ye mighty, and despair.
What better note to finish the pod than with such erudition from the esteemed Julie. Well, look, it's been fun. Now, listen, this is Rob. This is your first appearance on Nice One, Cyril. What we do is we give you a mark out of 10 for your first appearance. So, Julie, what are we giving Rob?
Well, so he's a great bloke. He came up with a great story for us to turn into a great book. I can only give him 10 out of 10 because he's absolutely excellent. Fantastic.
Well, look, Rob, I concur. I give you a 10, but I mark out of 100. So but still, that's still the best of any debutants. So that's well done, you. Thank you very much, Rob, for joining us today, and hope we'll get you back on. We normally have Kev Acott with us. Kev has been excused this week, which has left us with 3. But look, he'll be back next week, and I'll probably have a chat with Kev on Friday on the Extra Time pod. Meantime, why don't you give us a follow on Twitter at NiceOneCyrilPod. We have our own website, www.niceonecyrilpodcast.co.uk. All the episodes are on there. You can pick your way through this miserable season with us. And we are all over social media. And why not give us a follow or subscribe on the podcast platform of your choosing, and you'll never miss an episode. Look, sorry if we brought you down this week. I'm not sure there was any alternative, but we've tried our best to leaven it with a bit of fun and nonsense. We will be back on Friday, and then following that on Monday. And until then, come on, you Spurs.
Nice one, Cyril.